Welcome to episode, I think it's 8. I should have checked before I come on. This is the joys of having ADHD and trying to do anything remotely organized, is that you just have instant blanks at moments where you really need to call upon your memory. But yeah, I think we're episode 8 of the Mojito movement, and today I'm joined by an absolute legend in the fitness industry, Mr. Oisin Mulligan, and I will hand over to you to do an intro in a moment. But it's customary at the start that we do a little cheers to the mojito. Mine is a proper mojito. Yours is a monster, as you don't drink. But
you still got me to crack one open this early, so we're doing well.
Absolutely, and I was in a massive rush making that mojito, and that is the strongest one I've made so far on this podcast. It's very reminiscent, actually, of the mojitos from IFS, which is what inspired us to be here.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a good sign for a good chat. But before we get into it, mate, introduce yourself, tell everybody who you are and where they can find you.
Yeah, so this is always a hard question. I always get asked this one. I'm like, feck, I don't really like to describe myself, but I don't think many people do. So I am an online coach from Ireland. I feel like I approach online coaching maybe, or have come from a different position than maybe some others. I came from a position where I used to be about 130 kilos, and I ended up losing in around 60-ish to get down to my lowest. And since I've obviously come back up, because when I got down to my lowest weight, it was actually very, very unhealthy, and I lost weight in unhealthy manners initially at the beginning, regained a load of it, and then lost it again. So I've come from a position where I had no confidence, and I struggled with pretty much everything surrounding nutrition and health and training, to the point where actually I was supposed to do like an architecture course before I went and did sports science. And the last minute, I remember like a couple of weeks before I finished school, I switched. I was just like, all right, I'm going to go do it. And everybody like my teachers in school, and let's say I think the guidance counselor actually told me I was a little bit silly or stupid because there's no money in sports. I mean, like, how the hell are you ever going to make this a thing? Like, what you're going to do? Because you can't go into PE teaching straight from sports science. I was like, right, no, I just want to be able to help myself and help others through the same thing. So I don't really care. So yeah, that's kind of where I started from. Obviously posting videos on social media to try and help people out, and it just took off and exploded, which is absolutely crazy. And I'm grateful every day for all of the people that I get to help. But I always try and approach coaching from more of a mindset base rather than an approach of nutrition first. It's almost like an approach of people first and person first. And I feel like you're the same. Like when we were chatting at IFS, it's actually quite a similar story and quite a similar approach to health and wellness. So yeah, there's a long drawn out intro as to who the fuck I am, or I don't know if that's what I do or who I am, but we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. And for those listening, it's unlikely given the sheer volume of followers that you've got. But if somebody doesn't know where to find you, what's your Instagram and TikTok and everything?
Mulligan's Fitness. But if we're following Paul Andrews, we're good enough with that anyways. You don't have to come across, but it'll be good. It'd be good. More faces, more people collaborating is sick, which is why when you said across about getting on the podcast, I was like, yes, absolutely. And I'm delighted that we found a time to be able to sit down and have one.
Yeah, 100%. And I think podcast aside, it's just good for us to have a real good chat, because we were intending to do so at IFS, and such is the nature of IFS. It was a fleeting chat rather than a long detailed chat over a mojito. But what I wanted to dig into today, you alluded to it there. We come at our coaching from a very similar perspective. It's about helping everyday people make lasting change rather than falling into the classic dick swinging contest of being a PT, of trying to get the quickest and most extreme results so that you can put a decent before and after picture up. But before we get into that side of things in detail, I want to tap into your story a bit more, because I think actually your story, you as an individual, from your own personal journey of making progress, you alluded to it, making significant progress almost to the point where it became unhealthy again, with how much weight you lost back to a more manageable sort of weight and body composition, and then how you transitioned that into becoming the foundation of how you coach people. Talk me through your journey a little bit more, because I think it's an incredible and really inspiring journey that shows actually anybody can do this, and you can do it in a much more manageable way than perhaps it seems when you take to social media and you see people that are living off of chicken and rice and broccoli and training 4 hours a day.
So I suppose to go back to kind of the start of my journey, throughout school, I was bullied horrendously for my weight all of the time. It seemed to be the only thing that was ever wrong with me. And that kind of led into my future of that being the only thing that I needed to change about me so that I could be happy. And actually that all turned out to be a big, massive lie. And when I found out about that, I was like, holy shit, my weight isn't the thing that's wrong with me. That isn't always a bad thing either, because I was made to feel like any amount of fat is a bad thing, and having fat in any way makes you useless or incapable of things. And that messaging throughout school, like there's one particular message that I share quite a bit, and I shared at IFS as well, where I remember going on a bus journey home, and on the buses in school, all the cool people sit at the back, all the popular people, let's say, sit at the back. So I sat at the very, very front seat, and I was like, fuck it, right, I'll just sit up here and get through this bus journey, because I was bullied. I expected that was going to happen anyways at some stage. And I remember this guy came from the back of the bus to the front of the bus to sit beside me the whole hour and a half journey home, sat beside me, just literally calling me a fat cunt the whole way, literally repeated over and over and over again, like actually to the point where I remember putting my headphones in and he pulled a headphone out so that he could repeat to me again of what he already said to me 2 seconds beforehand, is you're a fat cunt. And that made me so upset, because it made me feel so useless. I remember getting off the bus, crying and walking the whole way home, and just thinking about how shit and useless I am, and how I'll never amount to anything or whatever it might be. And I think that's where like everything, approaching the gym became impossible, leaving my room became impossible, because I felt like I couldn't do anything, and that's what was wrong with me. And it was only true, actually, my change sparked from someone approaching me with kindness and compassion and empathy. My older brother came into my room and was like, look, do you want to come to the gym with me? It wasn't, do you want to go to the gym to lose weight? It wasn't, do you want to go to the gym to change who you are? It wasn't, do you want to go to the gym because you're fat, because you're lazy, you need to get up and move? It was actually, do you want to come to the gym with me and my friends? And I was like, sick, because anybody that has an older brother, you look up to that older brother as if they're the coolest person on planet Earth. You're kind of like, this person is unbelievable, and you would literally copy them doing anything. If my brother started taking drugs, I probably would have took drugs. If my brother started smoking, I would have started smoking. Anything that he did, I would have copied, because I would have thought that was sick. And he was going to the gym with his friends, and I thought him and his friends were unbelievable. I was like, yes, okay, let's go. So I went, and there was no real talk about weight loss or anything. It was just, Jesus, Oisin, your biceps are looking big today, or you're lifting this amount of weight today, or you're doing this. And that's actually where the happiness came from, and where I felt good. But I didn't realize that at the time. What I actually thought was happening is, because I was losing weight, that I was becoming a better person. So I associated lighter with better. And so my only journey was to become lighter on that scales, lighter on that scales, lighter on that scales, until it came to a point where I was having like half a chicken breast for my daily meal a day, and everything else would go straight in the bin. My mom knew there was something up with me, because all I was having was half a chicken breast, and that was it, nothing else. That's all I was allowing myself, and get my scale bit down. And then I started to feel like absolute shit. Like absolute shit. And matter of fact, I was still getting bullied, and I kind of just sat back and had the realization of like, holy fuck, like I've changed the way that my body looks all these times, and for everybody else, and actually it hasn't. I'm still being bullied. I'm still not feeling good in myself. And like all of this, the confidence that has come to me has actually come from me bettering myself and pushing myself out of my comfort zone and doing things I don't feel great with, to then coming out of that. And now I start to train for how I feel first rather than how my body looks. And that's one thing that I really wanted to push with people, is to really start to enjoy the process and enjoy exercise and enjoy nutrition for how it makes you feel, rather than just being, I'm just going to the gym to get bigger biceps. Because in my and this, sometimes that works for certain people, but in my story that didn't. And I want to help people that maybe have experienced the same as well. So yeah, there's the big long-winded story, I suppose, of going from really heavy to bullied to then getting started in the gym. And getting started in the gym for me as well, like, was really, really difficult, because I hadn't the confidence. And maybe somebody listening to this, it'll be the exact same. With that, I started by just going to the gym in the car outside to then going home. I remember specifically, actually, one moment my mom brought me to the gym, and she was the same. It's funny, two of us just sat in the car before I go on, and we sat outside, and then we were actually like, oh no, this is too scary, and then turned around and got home. And a lot went home instead of going in. And a lot of people would think that is a loss. And in my opinion, that is actually a win. Having the balls and courage to actually show up outside of a gym and not go in was the first step for me. The second time, it became a little bit easier. And it's so funny, because I've actually repeated this exact same process with jiu-jitsu over the last couple of years. Nobody knows. Everybody on my social media has seen that I competed in 3 jiu-jitsu competitions, and I lost some of them and I won some of them, but they weren't the wins. I had already overcome the fear then. Nobody's seen the 10 jiu-jitsu competitions that I signed up for and didn't show up for, and actually was too afraid to even try. Nobody has seen those. Not one person even knew about them. But they're the ones that allowed me to feel scared, feel afraid, to a certain point where I didn't have to do anything, but I still felt that feeling and did it anyway. So I booked my competition, and I just never showed up. But that was the first step I needed to eventually show up. So sometimes not showing up and not doing the thing, but attempting and taking one step forward leads you onto being able to do it. So I always look back at it and I always think, like, so many people even listen to this podcast that might be trying to get started on things don't actually realize by starting something and trying, you're already taking steps. You're already doing well. Like, obviously, January, a lot of people are panicked now. They're like, oh, I want to make all these changes and do X, Y, Z, and I'm not doing enough. Everybody else is doing so much more and I should be further ahead. It's like, no, the fact you're actually even thinking about doing something is really fucking positive. It's really, really good. The fact that you're actually even attempting to take a step forward, or maybe you did and you failed, that's really good. I seen this as well. I was like, this is unbelievable. There's 3 possible outcomes to a situation, right? First possible outcome is the positive action or the positive thing occurs. So you get to the gym, you lift the weights, you do the session, you feel really good after, really, really good. Or your calories, you stick to your calories and you lose weight. That's the first outcome that could possibly happen from taking action. The second possible outcome that could happen from taking action is failure, going over your calories, maybe under eating on your calories. It might be maybe not incorporating too much chocolate and ended up going 4,000 or 5,000 calories over, whatever it might be, like having one of these days where maybe you go on a binge or whatever it might be. That's the second possible outcome. So the negative, the positive. The worst possible outcome is not doing anything at all, because now you haven't failed, so you don't know the direction to actually take. So you're better off actually failing so that you can figure out what way to go about it or what way to better approach it than not take it. Because the person that hasn't taken action is thinking about taking action, is just beating themselves up over not taking it and not doing anything, so you can't figure out what's right. In any situation that you're struggling with, the best thing you can do is do something. The second best thing that can happen to you is the negative. The best thing that can happen is the positive. And actually, the negative and positive have equal chances of happening. And I always think back to this with my weight loss journey. All I did was ask a question. All I did was start. All I did was do something. I asked the question of myself of, are you capable of going to the gym? And the first time the answer was no, the negative happened. The second time answer was yes. Well, I went in for 5 minutes and then left. I think that's such a powerful thing for people to think about their journey, is that you don't have to get a yes for it to be a success. Sometimes the no is also a success to lead you on to that. But anyways, there's an even longer yap about my story.
Mate, I fucking love it. I could listen to you all day from that perspective. I think that your passion shows through. Everything that you say just really resonates. Not just with me, but I think just with people in general, because it's an authentic story. It's not the highlight reel that we see on social media where you get people who are quite clearly juiced to the eyeballs going, look at my 12-week transformation. Aren't I fucking amazing? But what they don't tell you is the hours in the gym, the hours of cardio, the cycle of fucking gear that they're on, the boring food that they're eating. And I think, you know, to unpick so much of what you said, the very first point I wanted to make actually from the start of that exceptional breakdown of your story is people are fucking cunts. People are absolute cunts, and particularly when you are growing up, when you're in school, people will hang their hat on literally anything they can to drag somebody else down. I was bullied for being short, and it's like there's not much you can do about that, to be honest with you. Like when you're like 14 or 15 and everyone else is getting growth spurts and you're still waiting for the day that you break 5 foot, like there's not much you can do. But people would just be like, oh, you're a fucking short ass. Like, oh yeah, brilliant, I'll go home and work on growing, thanks, that's really helpful. But like it's a brutal world when you're a kid that you live in, because pack mentality is actually probably at its biggest when you're in school, in that those who are deemed to be popular, people will just mimic and copy what they say, very much like what you said in terms of you would have done the same with your older brother. I would have done to an extent, but growing up I didn't always get on too well with my brother. He was a bit of a twat, so I probably wouldn't have idolized him massively. Perhaps when I was much younger, when I was like 4 or 5, I probably did idolize him, but as we got a bit older and moved towards our teens, we had a very what's the word? Not fractured, feels a bit strong. We basically, he bullied the shit out of me, and I got aggressive with him and would stab him with darts and stuff in retaliation.
It's crazy, because our experiences, and as you're talking about here, regards to like being younger and going through school, our experiences develop so much of how we approach life now. And I think a lot of people actually forget, like, maybe your scale weight right now isn't the issue. It's the fact of all of those times that you've previously been bullied and all these thoughts and feelings that you have around the way that your body looks, that is ultimately leading you to probably over consuming food, and ultimately leading you to gain fat, but also ultimately viewing yourself as less than. So it's hard to take action in the first place. And all of these things are so huge, but as you've spoken about, they're not touched on. And even there, regards to your height and being bullied for your height, if you were tall, you would have been bullied for being tall. If you're a
Yeah.
fucking normal size, you've been bullied for something else. And it's funny because that never changes. That same with social media, same with a lot of things. That pack mentality kind of happens and people get bullied for things. But one solution to this, I suppose, sorry to jump in over you, but to help people that maybe are struggling with this in the current moment of maybe having comments said to them over Christmas time about their weight or XYZ. And I know I understand I'm unbelievably lucky with my brother, and people might have fractured families and stuff like that and find that hard, but there's always somebody in your life, I suppose, that can support you with that. But in those situations, the best thing you can do is actually go and look at somebody's Instagram that you kind of look up to, or someone that you look up to, and look in their comment section. So an example for you with regards to being bullied for being short, go and find someone tall on Instagram, look in their comment section that maybe has a bit of a following, and there's going to be people slagging them off for being tall. And it's like, well, fuck it, all right. If I'm always changing myself for these people, nothing's going to change. I'm going to be bullied for something else. They're going to find something. People just have this negative mentality. And actually, what's much worse is if you think about them people, and I often think back to this person that sat beside me on the bus and did this. And I was like, right, whenever I am criticizing someone else, I never criticize them as hard as I criticize myself. I'm always my harshest critic on myself. And so imagine being in the head of that person. That outer critic is like that. Imagine what his inner critic is like. Crazy. Wouldn't like to live with it. Be impossible to live with. And actually, a lot of hard work probably will have to be done by him or them in the future to get through the mindset that's going to bully them and themselves. So yeah, anyways, that was an added point. Apologies, Paul.
Yeah, no, mate, absolutely love it. And you're quite right. I think when people give out hate, particularly on social media, particularly with apps like TikTok, for example, obviously I do a lot better on TikTok than Instagram. And the challenge that you have with apps like TikTok, probably less so with Instagram, but it's still there a bit, is that a lot of people can hide behind their profile. They don't need to post their own content. A lot of people on TikTok are there to consume rather than create. And it leads to getting a lot of trolls where people don't put any information about who they are on there, but they feel that it's appropriate because they've been given a voice to use the voice, even though their voice is that of a shit cunt. And they feel they need to comment on anyone that is probably making them feel insecure about their own lack of action, their own lack of direction. And they probably have a great deal of self-loathing. I mean, I get it all the time when I do lives. People come on my lives and they just comment shit for no reason. And I have a great enjoyment of taking the piss out of them. And I always pose the question, was it, is it a case of, your dad left and you lost direction, or did your parents just not love you at all? Or did your mum get with your sports teacher and he was rubbing your head, calling you slugger and promising that he wasn't hurting her? Like, what was it that broke you so much that you feel like an appropriate use of your time is jumping on my live and telling me that I look like a twat? But again, a part of the reason why I do that is we touched on it at IFS with one of the with the social media panel. I like to poke the bear. If people have got hours of their day to waste commenting on my content, it's only going to benefit me from an algorithm perspective. So I will quite happily have a bit of back and forth, because again, I think having been bullied through growing up, having had, I mean, you said it yourself, I'm my own biggest critic. There is very few things about me that I genuinely would say I like and love. My sense of humor, I absolutely love. My ability to find the comedy in a shit situation, I absolutely love. But like aesthetically, physically, there's so many things that I either have insecurities about or just don't like. So that, where was I going with that? Welcome to the world of ADHD. Started a sentence, lost my direction. But so
it makes sense standing up for yourself. Like you were talking about standing up for yourself, but that makes so much sense. And it's actually funny because a lot of people might look at you when you're doing things like that. And actually something that I would have been told by a lot of people on social media is like, don't bite back at those people, or just ignore them and move on. For me, right, because I've bullied for so long, I don't think that works for me, because for so long in school, I spend so much time ignoring the bullies, moving on from it, not doing anything, just telling the teacher. That solves no problems. My kids, when I get older, are going to be told, in a situation, if someone stands up to you, do not be the typical peaceful that people tell you to be. Do not do nothing about the situation, because actually doing nothing about a situation or not standing up for yourself is not being peaceful, because what's happening is you're allowing your inner person to be attacked and to not feel stood up for. And so in that situation where you're by yourself, that's not being peaceful, because you're allowing yourself to be defeated. You're allowing yourself to be attacked here. Being peaceful is actually standing up for yourself in the situation, where a lot of people think that that wouldn't be being peaceful or keeping the peace. That actually is, because your inner peace is way more important than anything else on this planet. And if you cannot keep that, you're going to be fucked in everything else. So one thing that I make adamantly clear is, If someone's going to throw a negative comment at me and I have energy to spend, I'm going to spend it standing up for myself to be peaceful in a situation. My jiu-jitsu coach taught me that one time. He said, being peaceful in a situation isn't allowing people to shit on you, isn't allowing people to talk bad to you and just moving away or walking away and being the bigger man, as they would say. Being peaceful is actually standing up for yourself in that situation and saying that is not okay, because you have two options. You go home and allow your inner critic to then beat yourself up over not standing up for yourself, or you can stand up and allow the other person to maybe feel what that little bit of a critic feels like. And for me, that's the way I approach the situation, and that's my ethos. That might not work for some people, and maybe someone listening to this might be like, that's an asshole's way of approaching life. That's my life. I'll live it my way and you can live it yours. And I suppose what you're talking about here with lives, I think you're personally dead right. If people are going to be coming on taking away from your negativity, you're sat there taking it, I'm sure after that live you're going to jump off, you're going to feel quite drained. At least when you jump off, you can be like, you know what, if somebody else is being called these names in person, maybe not online, but in person, and here's me standing up for myself, they might feel like I can stand up for myself too.
Yeah, and if nothing else, they might take some of my my responses and use that in their own life. I've used the heckle put downs of Jimmy Carr in the past. One of my favorites was from his first DVD, where he said that he got him to stand up for the pussy. He didn't realize he'd meet a cunt like the person that was heckling him. And I've used that on a live once or twice. I don't like to regurgitate too many other people's sort of material, but sometimes the cap fits, and it's funny. And again, I completely agree. I think I have a bit of fun with it, and I think if I don't engage with it and I don't make light of it in a way that makes me laugh and that I can kind of desensitize myself, I will take it personally, even if it's not in that moment. I will come away, and I've had it before in lives where I've done a live and I've had just a barrage of people being dickheads, and you come off afterwards and you just feel deflated, because when I do a live, it's a live Q&A. It's me helping people for free. It's me answering questions. And if I come away from it feeling like people have made it ineffective and have just been dickheads for no reason, like that can weigh me down. And we're all humans. And as much as I've got plenty of coping mechanisms that I can use, at the end of the day, if somebody is relentlessly telling you that you're a twat for some reason, whether it's how you look or what you're saying, like, there's going to be times where it affects you. And I think that for me, the way to break that down a little bit is to have a bit of fun back, because if I can make it a light-hearted situation, it makes it feel less shit from that side of things. I think laughter is the perfect medicine is a phrase that gets bandied around, and I think sometimes it absolutely is. When you're going for a shit time, like, if you can find something funny in that moment, it can just normalize it, and it can make it feel a lot less overwhelming. One of the points I wanted to go back to, we've gone on a wonderful tangent, but one of the points I wanted to go back to is you made the point in terms of, you got to the gym, you and your mum sat in the car, decided to go home. And what I love about that story is the fact that it really encapsulates something that I tell all of my clients. 1 mile an hour in the correct direction is always way better than 100 miles an hour in the wrong direction. And sometimes the very smallest action may seem completely insignificant, but if that paves the way for you to go one better the next time, and then the next time and the next time, what you find is, over a period of months, you've made unfathomable amounts of progress that, if you just tried to go from this point to that point, would have felt completely impossible. The analogy that always gets bandied around is like, if somebody says you've got to eat an elephant, you're not going to try and do it in 2 or 3 mouthfuls. You're going to do it bite by bite. And there's a coffee shop I always go to locally, which is amazing, and they've got a little thing on the wall, and it says that you don't need to see the full staircase to take the first step. And I can't remember, there's someone famous philosophizer that said it, and I can't remember who it was, but I love that phrase. And I think so many people need to kind of remember that when you've got goals and you want to achieve things, do not get consumed by the end goal, because if you forever compare where you are to your end goal, you're never going to be the finished article. And even when you get to that point where you thought you would be the finished article, 9 times out of 10, 2 or 3 months before you've reached that point, you've already started to think about the next goal, and it's already progressed and it's changed and it's evolved. So we're always going to be a work in progress from that perspective. And if you're only ever focused on that finished article, 9 times out of 10, people will end up giving up on their goals because they think they're not good enough. They think they're not doing well enough. Whereas if we can actually fall in love with that process, and we can begin to recognize that actually slow progress, as simple as a step forwards, is something to celebrate, it makes that journey more enjoyable, because actually every step of the way you've got something to celebrate. You're not waiting for that final big payoff. You've got, I think James Smith has said it so many times before, your goal isn't to lose 20 or 30 kilos, it's to lose the first kilo and then repeat. And when you break it down like that, you get the opportunity to celebrate almost every few weeks. Whereas if your goal is to lose 30 kilos, that might take you 6 months. It might take you 12 months. It might take you even longer, depending on a number of factors. And if you're waiting for that moment where you can say, I've lost 30 kilos to finally celebrate, most people will quit long before they get there.
Yeah, I think that analogy you used with the 1 mile per hour, I actually just wrote it down. Anybody who's looking at me looking in the corner of my screen is because I'm actually taking a couple of notes, because I always take things from everybody. And I think this is so important as well, is that you can always take nuggets of information from everybody around and apply things and use things. And for me, that really hit home, that analogy of 1 mile per hour in the right direction is better than 100 miles per hour in the wrong direction. And funny, I always use the analogy of like a coin jar. Of like putting, I don't know if you've ever experienced someone who collects coins or someone who has like the penny jar and they just throw all the pennies into it. I've just thrown one in, and I always think like, what's one penny I can throw in my jar today? What's one penny I can put in there? And so it might not seem like a huge amount, but then in 2 or 3 or 4 years time, I look back and the penny jar will be fucking full, and it might not be worth a huge amount nowadays, but look amazing. It's one of those things that like, when you look at like, how did that person collect so many pennies? I don't know how that happened, but just throwing them in one at a time. And I think the best pennies you can throw into the jar. And I actually talked about this with the group that I coach recently about their goals. And I made every single one of them pick their scariest goal. And I was like, that's the goal that's most important. That's your goal that we need to make sure that we approach. Every other goal, you know deep down that you can achieve these. These are often the goals that we think of, and initially we'll write them on a piece of paper. But we'll always have that one goal that we think, oh, I won't write that down, or maybe I won't. Maybe I'll skip over that one because I don't think that's achievable, or I don't think I can get to 1 million followers. I don't think I can get 1,000 people listen to my podcast, or I don't think I can get X amount of people helped, or to lose X amount of weight, or whatever it might be. So we skip over that one. But that's actually the most important goal. And the reason that is because with regards to your feeling of I can't do this or I'm not able, that's often what holds you back from taking action on something. So what you actually get better at is taking action when you feel like you can't. And so the best
100%.
skill that you can possibly have is actually making a start on that goal that you feel is unachievable in any way, even just one step forward with it. So for me, years ago, that was actually even just going to the gym. So my one step forward was obviously sitting out in the car outside of the gym, not even going in there. But for me, that got me better. That was a skill I was developing. I got better at taking that action when I fully felt like I couldn't. So I often come back to that book. I've never read it in my life, but it's one of these book covers that I look at and I don't need to read the book after. Feel the fear and do it anyways. Right. Every time I see that book cover, I'm like, fuck, right. I actually don't even need to read that book because that makes so much sense. And that's a skill that people need to develop. In a moment when you feel like you can't, or in moments where you feel like you cannot, literally just taking a step forward. It doesn't matter what the outcome is. It doesn't matter whether it's positive. Doesn't matter whether the outcome is negative. But actually just being able to take a step forward is courageous and something that you will develop. And also the measure of achievement is with that level of fear. So if I have someone that comes, or anybody listening to this, that wants to run a 5 kilometer, and you're comparing yourselves to people that are maybe running 10Ks, right? The 10K is scary for some people. The 10K is not scary for some people. Some people go out and run it every single day. The person running it, right, every single day, if I asked them to go out and run a 10K, wouldn't feel accomplished after doing it because they're like, oh, you can do that anyways. But the person that has never ran before, and I set the goal of running 5 kilometers, overcomes that and gets that self-achievement and feeling of confidence. And I feel good, I've done this. What are we all chasing with this sort of thing? Is that feeling of happiness and I've achieved things and I feel good. But that only comes if you feel something is hard or something is difficult. And the more hard and difficult it is, the more achieved that you feel after it. And matter of fact, the more times you fail, the harder that becomes, the harder that journey is, the more of a story that you have to tell about it. But also on top of that, the more achievement that comes along. So if I go to a jiu-jitsu competition and I lose 50 and I win one, that one that I win, I'm going to feel so accomplished with. It gives me 10 times more than that person that actually went out and won their first jiu-jitsu competition, or their second jiu-jitsu competition, or more than that person that runs 10K every day, just going out and running another 10K. So it doesn't really matter what other people are doing or anything. It's just your ability to take action on things that you feel like you can't take action on. And it doesn't matter whether that's getting up to go to the toilet to take a piss. If that's hard for you because you're struggling with your mental health, whatever it might be, let's take action with that. And let's start with that as a first thing, rather than feeling like, oh, well, that's not good enough because that's not an achievement because everybody does that online, or everybody does that every day, or whatever it might be. Remove all of that and actually just find what you find hard, set that as an achievement, and let's get ticking that box because that's where it comes from. But that analogy of 1 mile per hour in the right direction is 100 miles per hour, or over the 100 miles an hour in the wrong direction, is unbelievable.
Yeah, and again, I think to hone in on what you said there, when you look at the spectrum of people who have ever failed to achieve their goal, the majority of people don't achieve their goals not through failure, but through fear of failure. It's the inaction. It's never getting started kills more goals than failure. And the reason why that is because when anytime anybody is committed to reaching their goal, failure isn't actually, it's not failure. It's not the end of your goal. It's a lesson. It's a step back. It's a sideways move. You know, you
Yeah.
look at anyone who's ever achieved anything. It's never been a completely linear success where they've gone from point A to, oh, yep, now I've achieved it. Like, there will be setbacks. There will be lessons to learn. And I think when you commit to that big goal that feels like it's almost too big and it's impossible, you learn along the way, and ultimately, even if you don't fully achieve it, you'll achieve far more than if you just sat there and went, well, there's no point.
Yeah.
You know, and again, using the example that you gave, you know, whether it's follow account on Instagram, whether it's a certain amount of weight that you want to lose, the reality is if you start and you move in the correct direction and you do the right things, you are going to see results. Whether those results end up to being the, you know, the final goal that you had, maybe, you know, and some people are over ambitious and do overestimate what they're capable of. But even still, if they take a step back after 6, 12, 18 months of consistent action and look at where they were versus where they are, they'll still be significantly further on than where they would have been if they went, oh, that's never going to happen, and they just sat there and did fuck all about it.
It's funny, that thing you're talking about, big, massive goals. And I think for people that maybe are struggling to get started in January or with any goals, one thing that I actually used with a client of mine there the last day, and it worked really, really well. And maybe it's something that will help people that maybe feel like they can't achieve anything or can't do anything. A lot of that actually just comes from your mindset of maybe previously not achieving things, and you've given yourself more evidence than not that you can't. And sometimes that's what we are believing in our heads, that we can't do this thing. But what I want you to do is say, we're going to have one goal for 2025. So whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. So let's use weight loss, because the majority of people listening to this, probably weight loss is what they're looking for. So your main goal is weight loss. I want to lose weight. I want to lose 50 kilos by the end of the year. And as you talked about here, okay, right. Well, there's a million different things that you can go about that. And that's a long journey. So that can feel quite overwhelming. But if we go down to the actions that weight loss that we need to take in order to lose weight, one of the actions might be drinking a glass of water, right? That's one of the simplest actions that we can take in order to help us lose weight. So if I'm telling people that are maybe struggling to start with their goals, or maybe not feeling motivated or finding things difficult, the only goal I have for you of 2025, the only goal that I want you to write down on your piece of paper, just one goal, that's it, is drink a glass of water. Does that get done? Have you achieved your goal for 2025 then? When will you do that thing for, or that action for that goal? You'd probably get it done right this second. You'll probably get it done in the next 10 minutes, because then what? You have all of your goals ticked off for 2025. The task list is complete and you're finished. Then you're going to probably be like, all right, that was my only goal for 2025. Now I have nothing. Then you set another one. It's like, all right, well, now I'm going to drink 2 glasses of water is my next goal. And that's my only goal for 2025. That's the only thing I'm allowed to focus on. So eventually it becomes achievable when we break it down that way, of being like, fuck, right, well, I don't have these 1,000,001 things to do. All I have to do is do this one goal for 2025. But you're tricking your brain, because then you're going to add another goal the next time. So I'm like, all right, well, now I'm bored because I have no goals for 2025. Let's add in the next one. And I think I always think of it as like, just throw that penny in the jar. The only goal is getting one penny in the jar every time. If you do that, that's a goal for 2025 done. But then you're going to have another penny and you have to throw it in the jar again. So it's kind of that cycle. But breaking it down to make it that simple makes things so much more achievable. And I think like the reason most people don't do that is a lot of messaging online and on Instagram and stuff like that, or wherever, your TikTok or whatever, is because the more confused me and Paul can make you about weight loss, the more confused and overwhelmed we can make you feel about weight loss, the more likely is that you purchase our program or buy our program or get involved in things. But the thing is, me and Paul are not wankers, dickheads, or cunts. So we don't want to do that. Matter of fact, we spend hours a day putting together information to try and help you guys out for free. Right? Because if we help you out for free, then eventually you might think, look, these guys help me out for free. And if that's their free shit, then maybe I'll try and see if they can help me personally. And I can guarantee you that stuff is probably even better than the free stuff you give out. But I think so many people get caught in the people that are making them really confused about stuff, and their goal is really overwhelming and making them feel like they can't achieve it. So then you're like, quick solution, here's my money, take it, let's solve it. But you've actually just been tricked by that person into feeling like you can't achieve things. Meanwhile, me and Paul are trying to tell you that just break it down, make it as simple as possible. So simple that even the stupidest cunt on planet Earth, think of that stupid cunt that was in your school that you absolutely hated. Even he could do it. And that's drinking a glass of water. And if you can do that, then it becomes achievable. And I think that then I'd be, if nobody ever paid for my program, but everybody on the planet took a step forward and didn't feel this lack of self-confidence or lack of goodness within themselves and didn't pay me a penny, but they could not feel like that anymore. And it's because we broke down the information so simple that they started to apply, I would be happy. I'd be like, fuck it, right, that was my job done. Unbelievable, class. There's so many people that are the opposite though. Don't give a fuck about you feeling like that at all. Don't care about you feeling like you can achieve things. They want to feel like you can't, so that you have to pay someone to help them feel like they can. And
Yeah.
I think that's where, like, and a lot of people don't see, like, you kind of spoke about this. Sorry to jump all over the place again. The ADHD brain's taken off here. You kind of spoke about this as well, where you're jumping on lives for free, right? You're jumping on lives for free to help people out, and that's not something that I'm like, all right, we're doing it for free, so we need loads of camaraderie, and people say, oh, well done, thank you so much. It's not that, but to recognize that, like, if, say, a therapist or a shop was to open up its doors for an hour and be like, come in here and grab whatever you want for free, or come in here and we'll do whatever, they'd be like applauded and be like, oh yeah, you're unbelievable doing X, Y, Z. The thing is, we don't even ask for shit like that. We don't even care for any stuff like that. We're just like, I just genuinely want to help as many people as possible. And that actually comes from people who have been bullied relentlessly. That comes from people who have felt the worst of the worst, because you never want someone to feel like that, like you have before. And so it's actually just in us to be able to try and help as many people as possible. That's rare, because many people that are like me and Paul, in a situation where we have felt not good enough and felt shit, aren't even confident enough to put up a video on social media, aren't even confident enough to get up and leave their bedrooms, aren't even confident enough to get up and go to the gym, never mind post videos to try and help people or jump on a live and put themselves out there in order to be criticized. Actually, the majority of people that you're seeing online are the opposite. People who were the bullies, people who were these people that always had this, or had situations where they didn't feel shit, so they actually don't understand how you feel, and they don't care either, so they just try and sell you some shit. But that's how corrupt the industry is with a lot of things. And I suppose just to kind of highlight the good that you are doing, even by sitting down here for an hour, as you said, I think you recorded 8 podcast episodes or something like that you were talking about. I'm like, holy fuck, that's so much. That's like so much information for so many people. So if you're listening to this, listen to the next one. Give Paul a like or a share on his podcast or to somebody, because a lot of work goes in behind the scenes on these, and our ultimate goal is to just try and help. There's no paywall in front of the podcast or anything like that. It's like just free information to try and help and break things down as simple as possible. But to go back to that point, the reason we do that is to make it feel like that you can achieve things and you can do this, because we want you to be able to start. We want you to be able to do things. So when you're thinking in your head, oh, I can't do this, I'm not able, maybe it's because other people have made you feel like that's not good enough on social media. And if they're making you feel like that, well, they're not good enough for you, and tell them to fuck off and unfollow them or block their account, whatever it might be. Curate your position to be the best it possibly can.
Yeah, mate, I've absolutely loved that, everything that you said. You're like just spewing out liquid gold, verbal gold rather than liquid gold. But mate, there's so much in there to unpack, and I completely agree that the industry is full of people, because again, if you go back historically, most people that got into becoming a PT probably 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago did so because they love fitness. Now, if you love fitness, if you love eating healthy, if you love training, if you get up every morning and you can't wait to go to the gym, and you absolutely fucking love prepping all your food, the reality is you're going to lack one very important aspect when it comes to helping people who don't love fitness, who don't love prepping their food, who don't love training for hours a day, or do love it but can't do it because they've got kids, jobs and everything else. Is you will lack empathy. And the industry is packed full of people, in my opinion, that completely lack empathy, and in a way to mask the fact that they really can't relate to the people that they claim they want to help, they create financial dependency on their method, the way that they compensate for the fact that they've never really struggled with their own weight, they've never had to put up with being the subject of relentless abuse. Like, for me, again, just going right back to the start of the conversation, I had a situation with a few people. My brother was one. He once, I just got with my missus at the time, so this is coming up for like 10 years ago now. I was stood in her kitchen. He at the time sold Herbalife. If only I knew how shit it fucking was at the time. And he got me to stand on his Tanita scales, and he did a body scan, and it came up that I was like 23% body fat. Now, I knew that wasn't correct because I'd had a PT at the time. He'd used calipers, and I was about 15%, but I wasn't happy with how I looked. And he lifted my shirt and he pinched my stomach in front of my new missus and was like, yeah, you are carrying a bit of extra. And I was like, oh, cheers, mate. The next moment that I had that really fucked me up with again, I've never had confidence in how I look from a physique perspective, but I used to play a lot of football, and I'd missed 2 seasons, just over 2 years, with tendonitis in my patella tendon. Just couldn't play, couldn't train, and the tendonitis started at the point where I decided I was going to compete in a men's physique competition. So I'd started a lean bulk program with my coach. Didn't adjust anything to reflect the fact that I was only training 2 days a week instead of 5. Didn't reflect the fact that I wasn't playing football. Smashed the calories, and as my knee got better and I'd finished treatment with that, I returned to playing 6-a-side. And the captain of my Sunday league team that I used to run came up to me and he just pokes me in the stomach and he was like, oh, someone's comfortable in married life. And like, I didn't see it in myself. I didn't think that gotten fat. I thought I was looking relatively good. And then as soon as that happened, I was like, fucking, like, he is correct. And obviously for me, it spurred me on to, I lost about 14 kilos in 6 months. I got myself into better shape. I qualified at the same time as a PT, and it changed a lot of things. But to kind of round this monologue off, the point that I'm making is there's so many people out there who've never been through this, who fucking love fitness, love everything about training and dedicating their life to it. And like I said, because they lack empathy, because they don't understand what it's like to be on the other side, to be someone who's struggled, to be someone who's been ridiculed about how you look, to be someone who is afraid to take the top off. I don't know if you noticed that IFS, I wore drop sleeves every day. There was only two occasions where I didn't have a t-shirt on, and that was the 2 C dips that I did in the morning. And both days I nearly didn't go because I was petrified about taking my t-shirt off.
Fuck. And such a hard environment too.
Yeah, and that's in an environment full of incredibly supportive people. And I'm at the moment, I'm not in the greatest of shape because we got a puppy, and I've only started training this week since we've had him. We've had him like over 2 months, and I'm ashamed to admit. But I went to IFS and I was in relatively good shape, but I was still too self-conscious to take my top off. And I'm a fitness professional, and people would look at me and would assume that I would be in good shape and that I'd be confident and stuff. And actually, this is why we work the way that we do, because we understand what it's like to be that person. And we understand that actually the best approach here is not to give you something you can do for 3 weeks where you're going to get rapid results, so that I can then showcase your results as a dick swinging contest to other coaches about how great I am. And then ultimately in 6 months' time, see that person back at square one.
Yeah.
Our goal as individuals is to take people from where they are and gradually help them make simple, easy to implement changes over an extended period of time, so that in 10 or 15 years time, they are still doing those same behavior patterns that got them the results, so they can maintain it. And I think it's a really unsexy sell when you're saying to people, I'm going to get you slower progress than that guy. It's a really unsexy sell when you say to people, I'm not going to make your life a misery for the next 12 weeks so that we get a great before and after photo, but I'm going to change your life forever. Whereas if we're a V-Shred, or we're an Eddie Abu, or whoever it is that's chatting absolute shit at the moment, if we were to just jump on the bandwagon and go, oh, do you know what, it's really popular at the moment to eat off of a chopping board and tell people to avoid 99% of all foods, we could skyrocket to lots of likes, lots of engagement, lots of follows, probably lots of people buying our program, because it sounds like it would work because it's so different to what people are doing now.
It's one of the things I actually, Paul, I don't use any transformation pictures on my page, so you will never see a client with a top off. You'll never see a client with different clothes. And actually, if I did, I'd probably have 10 times the clients that I do, but I don't give a fuck, because I actually, when I help people, I want to make sure I help them right, not force them into their boxers and be like, here, get on my, because that people are like, oh, it's inspirational for me, right? And I'm okay with coaches having different opinions. You probably have a different opinion. Everybody has a different opinion, but this is where my values don't change because somebody else is in the industry. And I think that's what happens with a lot of coaches, is they feel like I have to prove this to this coach and I can't do this because this coach is going to think this of me. I don't give a fuck. Half the coaches in the industry probably wouldn't like me when I'm younger, probably don't like me now. And I don't give a fuck because I do things my way, because that's how I feel. And again, I'm standing up for myself with it. So regards to transformation pictures and stuff, I don't use them. One, the reason I don't use them is because a lot of people say that, oh, they're inspiration to others. When other people see someone with their top off and in certain clothes, that they're going to feel better. They don't. There's not one time anybody has ever looked at a transformation picture and been like, oh yes, I feel so much better after looking at that like that. Matter of fact, it actually is the opposite, making people feel worse about themselves. That's what your goal is. It's not to inspire people, it's actually to make people feel worse, because when people feel worse, then they'll purchase your program. That's what every coach is looking for. If there's one coach here that is telling me that they're putting up transformation pictures to inspire people, you're talking out your bollocks. You're doing it to try and promote a challenge or to promote something. I think what's more important is actually feelings of how this person has changed, like what things they've done to approach a change and the mindset behind it. Because a lot of the time as well, it isn't the change in their body that has led them to being more confident. It's actually doing hard things. So to bring this message back, and the reason I wanted to bring that transformation picture thing up is because with you on the beach and at IFS, and this is actually something that I had to teach myself after a little while, and something that I was actually that makes much more sense, is obviously I'm a higher body fat percentage than you. I'm actually higher body fat percentage than most coaches, I would say. And I prefer to be at that way. I feel much better at that level. And a lot of coaches look at me and be like, oh, you're just lying to yourself by saying that. No, I genuinely do. And I perform better in my jiu-jitsu competitions when I'm higher. And sometimes, yeah, I can feel a little bit uncomfortable and want to lose fat. Just because I don't really give a fuck about how many abs I have or the way that I look doesn't mean that I don't care about my health and I don't care about how I feel. I mainly go off how I feel in regards to weight loss and stuff like that. But when it comes to going on the beach to take my top off or anything like that, I actually don't really fear that as much as I used to, because the way I think about it and the way that I put it in my head, and maybe this will work for some people and won't with others, is that a lot of people are actually not in shape or not afraid of let's say their abs or whatever it might be. I don't know if I'm wording this right, but essentially the reason why you don't want to take your top off on the beach and why you're so self-conscious is actually not the fact that you have too much fat. It's just that you haven't done it that often. So it's actually the fact that we're not used to taking our clothes off or our t-shirts off in front of people. From being from the UK, if you look at anybody here, like, it's not often that we get a sunny day to be able to go to the beach and take the top off. It doesn't happen often. Therefore, of course, imagine going to the gym for the first time. We feel uncomfortable. Normal. We're not feeling uncomfortable because we're fat necessarily, maybe some parts, but we're feeling uncomfortable because I've never done this before. And so going to the beach to take your top off, a lot of that is, I've never really done this before, and this isn't something I'm comfortable doing because I haven't done it enough. How many times have I gone to the beach and taken my top off? Maybe 5 times. But if we go to look to people in Spain or and countries where it's sunny, a lot of the time, a lot of them live on the beach. There's loads of different size, shapes, and everything on the beach. And none of them really seem to be self-conscious or really give a fuck. And they don't really double think about taking off because they do it all the time. It's natural. It's part of their culture. Some of them don't wear any clothes at all on the beach. And I find that absolutely outrageous. Even if I was in the best shape of my life and had a 20 pack, I'd still be afraid of taking my shorts off because everyone would look at me and be like, he's the smallest cock on planet Earth, and they'd probably be all right. But this thing of, they're just used to doing it. So they're used to taking this off. And I think when you approach it with that, maybe it's like, well, maybe actually it's not the fact that I'm self-conscious of my body. It's just that maybe I need to go to the beach more often, take my t-shirt off in front of people, and I feel better with that. So the steps that you took at IFS with regards to taking your t-shirt off and getting into the beach and going to that, I know it wasn't just a t-shirt off on the beach thing. That's what I'm making it sound like. But being around other coaches, sometimes it's like, well, actually, if I did this the first time, I went to the beach and I took my top off and we went for a swim all together or whatever, I feel more comfortable doing it the second time. I'm more comfortable the third time and more comfortable the fourth time, to the point where then it becomes something that, a skill that you've gotten better at, more so than a thing that's wrong with you in that kind of way. Yeah. I think that's important because coming up to summer, we're in January, a lot of people will kind of push the thing of changing your body shape or getting in the best shape for summer. And shape is something that I have a fucking issue with, because I'm like, there isn't a jigsaw piece when you walk in that you have to hold your arms like this to walk through. Do you know, like, what's that called? The puzzle where you put in the puzzles. That if you don't put the puzzle right, you can't go to the beach or you can't enjoy your summer and this sort of thing. Or there isn't a shape that you have to be to do whatever it is that you want to do. Obviously, there's important parts to our health, to losing fat. I never talk away from that. I'm not this person that's body positivity, just get as fat as you want. Doesn't matter. You don't feel good when you're like, people know that. When you are a high body fat percentage, you know in yourself, maybe you don't feel that good. That's okay. But it shouldn't stop you from doing things. And there shouldn't be a thing of, you have to be a certain shape, because that shape looks different for everybody. My shape, somebody might look at me and have a completely different shape and be like, well, I don't feel good with this level of body fat. It doesn't mean that I don't. We're completely different. We lead into obesity and weight gain and weight loss. Actually look up the obesity foresight map if you've never looked it up before, anybody listening to this. So obesity foresight map, it is a huge graph of all the psychological, social factors, environmental factors that lead to weight gain and weight loss outside of calories and energy. So calories and energy is in the middle, and then this graph is interconnected to the calories in the middle with everything else. And if you look at that, you're like, holy fuck, actually, there's so many different factors as to why maybe I have a little bit more body fat. It doesn't mean that it's uncontrollable and that it's out of your control, but it just means that, well, I can feel better maybe at a higher body fat percentage instead of somebody else. And this is why I'm going on loads of tangents here, why I disagree with the BMI scale. I think, right, I know everybody has the issue with the BMI scale with regards to being muscle mass and stuff like that, but I actually think there's more to it than that. Jobs, office job. Someone who has an office job is probably going to sit at a higher percentage body fat than somebody who is working construction. Yeah. Probably going to happen. So the BMI scale for those two jobs should be different.
100%.
Yes. So this is where I'm like, right, there's so much to this, an environment, and someone working an office job would actually probably feel 10 times worse at 6% body fat or 8% body fat in comparison to someone else doing a construction job at that. Because a construction job, you're moving around all day. That's part of whatever you do. But in the office job, you're sat down and you have to make up the rest of the exercise throughout the day that you're not in your work. And so you have to put in running and sprinting and fucking cutting your calories really, really low in order to get to this position. Meanwhile, this person is just there because of their work. Obviously, it's the same level of essentially work between. Sometimes it's not those, because calories and stuff like that can change. But if you view it in that way, it's like, well, fuck, even work environments can impact the amount of body fat that I have and how good I feel at a higher percentage body fat or lower percentage body fat. So yeah, sorry. Now I'm after going on a mad ramble there.
No, I think it's so important because again, people do get really caught up in 9 times out of 10 the wrong things. They get consumed by stuff and don't recognize actually that environmental factors play a significant role in terms of how we look, how we feel. Again, I'm a great example of it. When I started coaching online because I was working full time at the time, and my previous job was really sedentary. I was driving up and down the motorway for hours a day and then sit in meetings. It was a pretty sedentary job. Became an online coach full time. Started working in a gym because it got a bit lonely. And when I was in the gym, you get loads of steps in. I was training all the time. My activity level was high, but now I'm back to a fully online coach. So there are days where I'm literally just like chilling on the sofa pretty much the entire time. And people look at me and go, "You're an online PT. You must be the fittest person ever. You must be so active." And I'm like, "No, some days I probably do like 10 steps. Like it's literally to the kitchen to get my lunch. It's to the kitchen to have dinner. It's like to go and get grab a drink." And again, it plays a big factor. And people overlook this. If your lifestyle is dictated to you, which most people's are by the job that you do, that needs to be taken into account. And it's why I always look at, with each person I work with, I always get asked the same question. You probably do too. How many days do I need to train to lose weight? How many times should I go to the gym? And the answer is never how many times should you. The answer is how many times can you?
Yeah.
Look at what you're capable of. And that's not just in terms of what your life commitments allow, but it's also in terms of what your physical capabilities are. I got diagnosed with a condition called POTS, which I've spoken about a few times across the podcast so far. And that massively changed how I'm able to train. I cannot put up big numbers anymore. There's lots of exercises I can't really do. I went to the gym this week and trained legs, and it was the first time in about 18 months I've been able to squat and do RDLs without going dizzy. So for me, like if I was to look at what's optimum for building muscle or staying in good shape, I would probably put myself in the gym 4 days a week. I would probably do a push-pull leg split of some degree, maybe 2 leg sessions a week. And I would look to sit in rep ranges of maybe 8 to 10 reps. And I'd look to get within 1 rep of failure on each set. And you go, yeah, perfect. Well, I can't train like that because actually for most of last year, the only 2 exercises I could do legs wise that didn't make me nearly pass out in the gym was a leg extension and a leg curl. So instantly I'm like, well, I can't adhere to the optimum approach. And too many people get bogged down in terms of they look at what they're supposed to do, and if it doesn't fit their lifestyle because of their physical capabilities or their other commitments, instantly they don't start because they're like, well, I can't do that, so what's the point? And I think if we can help people to appreciate actually your situation doesn't define your likelihood of success, all it defines is the method that you need to take. It helps people to find a method that they can actually stick to and actually enjoy and actually fits around them. Because again, coming back to that point about coaches who lack empathy, who then sell a shitty approach which nobody's going to stick to, and then rather than people look at that approach and go, well, it was a shit approach, most people self-reflect and go, I'm a shit person for failing. It's born out of trying to adhere to something that doesn't fit you as an individual. And if you can take that step back and you can look at what can I do and build an approach, a plan around that. Yes, it might not be as sexy. Yes, the results might not be as quick, but if you can tick the boxes consistently, you will get better progress over the long term, adhering to an approach that actually fits you as an individual than trying to shoehorn yourself into something that wasn't right from day one.
Yeah.
And to bring it back as well to another point that you made in terms of when we were talking about, I was just about to make a point and it's literally just escaped my brain. We'll come back to it. It was a really good point. I'm sure of it.
That always happens to me as well. I'm talking. Sometimes I'll get to a point. I'm like, look, I had something genius to say there and it disappears. But maybe it wasn't the right time for it. So it'll come back when it's needed.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. But yeah, I think in terms of what I want people to get from this episode in particular is there's a lot of misconception that in order to achieve a great physique, in order to feel happier, healthier, have more confidence, that you have to fit into a particular approach, a particular box. And 9 times out of 10, again, reiterating the point that I just made, 9 times out of 10, people try to adhere to a lifestyle they know from minute one they won't like. And then they make themselves feel like shit when They didn't stick to it because they didn't like it. And if there's one thing I want people to take from this episode, is that actually the value of a good coach is not how lean they are. It's not even how many followers they've got. And I'm saying that because I've got none on Instagram in comparison to you. The value of a coach is how they can help each individual create a lifestyle they can stick to and enjoy. Our jobs as coaches is not to get the best before and after pictures. And I completely echo what you said actually about before and after pictures. I never post transformation pictures because it's not for me to post. If I post it, that's me entering into a dick swinging contest with every other coach going, look how great I am. I got this person great results. Yeah. Actually, if one of my clients wants to share their progress, then 100% share it. Tag me in it. I'll share it as well. But I will never post it because two things happen. If I go and share some before and afters, what about all my other clients that I work with that are doing amazing, who I haven't just shared their before and afters? How does that reflect on them? Well, instantly they look at it and go, well, why isn't he sharing my pictures? Maybe I'm not doing very well. And if they don't feel like they're doing particularly well and they're looking at somebody else I'm working with who they then determine is doing better than them, what's their thought process going to be? Well, it's going to be pretty straightforward. It's going to be, well, why are they getting results and not me? So me trying to enter this dick swinging contest of look how great I am ultimately is going to piss off the majority of my clients because I can't share everybody's pictures. Yeah. I'll be there forever. You've also then got to take into account that before and afters are so easy to doctor. People put them up and go, oh, this is my client. Look at what they achieved in 12 weeks. Was it 12 weeks? Are you providing the hard fucking whatever it's called, the metadata of those images to prove that they were taken 12 weeks apart? Or have you actually taken some images of people that's actually a 12-month transformation, slap 12 weeks on it to sell your next program?
Yeah.
It also doesn't tell the sacrifices made to get there. When you see individuals who have made amazing progress in 12 weeks, it doesn't tell you the fact that they've slogged like an absolute bastard, that they've lived a really restricted life from their diet perspective and probably hated every minute of it, but they look great in the photos where they've got a professional photographer in the gym with insane lighting and they go, oh yeah, got to work with this coach. Look at what you helped me achieve. And it's like, yes, physically he helped you achieve something great, but what was the lasting effect of that? Because again, as someone who went down the route of physique competitions, I know for a fact that when I looked my absolute best whilst I was prepping, I had the worst relationship with food, the worst body dysmorphia, and probably the worst relationship with training, in that if I had a shit session, it would really frustrate me. And it would really I would be fucking miserable. But again, before and afters don't show all of that context. They just show a snapshot.
I've seen coaches as well use other coaches' transformation pictures as their own transformation pictures. If you get not even other clients, so what coaches will do is they obviously have a transformation before they became a coach or whatever, but they'll allow other coaches to utilize that if they can utilize theirs to then share as a thing that's actually not even their coach and know what's happened. But also regards to changing of body weight, like I think starving yourself is fucking easy. Everybody has lost weight at some stage, right?
Yeah.
Not saying it's good and it's not something that people should go. And when I say easy, I don't mean it in that way. When I say easy, I mean not eating food, starving yourself. Like a lot of people fall into that trap. That is essentially what people do when they're doing these photo shoots, is fucking figuring out ways that's best to starve themselves. I am not on this planet to starve myself for a long period of time, nor am I on this planet to prove how good I am at starving myself. That's all it is. That transformation,
100%.
This person was this good at starving themselves in comparison to this is how good they were before at starving themselves. And it's just like, it fucking makes no sense.
Yeah.
If anything, in an industry where we're supposed to be building people up, so many coaches decide to knock people down. And also another thing with transformation pictures that I don't think a lot of people actually realize is a lot of your clients and things like that aren't used to social media. Do not use social media a huge amount. They might have watched videos, but they're not used to scrutiny on social media. Sometimes with transformation pictures, scrutiny can happen. So when other people in their friend zones or in their community or in their workplace or whatever it might be are seeing these pictures, they might start to get scrutinized. Outside of that as well, your own social media following might also start to do the same thing. That is unbelievably hard to deal with somebody that has never experienced that before. Think about the first time that you've ever experienced hate. It can impact things quite badly. And that can actually impact disordered eating, especially if you're getting comments underneath transformation pictures, or you're having people comment being like, oh, she's really, really skinny, or she's too skinny, or maybe she's lost too much weight, or she hasn't lost enough, or that's not a transformation, or because these all have potential to happen. Don't say that doesn't.
Yeah.
On posting these things on social media, all it takes is one person to create a fake profile, might leave a comment underneath that because they think that that's funny. How negatively that can impact your clients is absolutely crazy. But by you putting them up on social media like that, you're allowing that to happen. I agree with you in the fact of if any of my clients ever shared a transformation picture of themselves on their social media and they were happy enough, I'd be like, yep, I'll share that across. I don't mind. Because that's them. That's inspiring for them. That's doing their thing. That's not me deciding for them to put that up on my social media, because I'm not doing it for the sake of inspiration. I'm doing it for the sake of getting people on my program. That's what most people do.
Yeah, mate, I completely agree. Completely agree on that side of things. And again, I think it's the nature of the industry, isn't it? People seem to think that in order to be a good coach, you need to demonstrate it. And I get asked, people comment on my TikTok and stuff, and they're like, oh, if you're that good, like, why don't you ever share pictures of your clients? And I'm like, well, because actually some of the biggest changes that I make with my clients is psychological. It's their relationship with food, their relationship with themselves. It's how they view themselves, how they talk about themselves. So what do you want me to do? Put a picture of them looking sad and then a picture of them looking happy and say, this is 12 weeks. Like,
you wouldn't know. It's funny.
But mate, I think we're at a really good place to sort of round off. I think you and I can probably chat for hours, and I say this pretty much to everyone that's been on. Like, we'll definitely get you on again, because I think there's so much. We've barely scratched the surface at the end of the day. And I think there's so much to get into that's worth the time. I don't almost want to do it an injustice by like glossing over things. So I think we're at a good point to round the episode off. So firstly, obviously, I want to thank you for coming on. It's been awesome. It's been such a good chat. I think we've covered so much, but also just before we do, again, for anyone listening, if they're one of probably about 4 people on the planet that don't follow you, where can they find you?
So Mulligan's Fitness on Instagram, TikTok. I'm on YouTube or any of them really anyways. But yeah, it's been brilliant jumping on your podcast. Really enjoyed it as well. And like how similar of a message we have is absolutely unbelievable. Just before we go, to kind of touch on that point of when people are asking you questions about your results or your clients or whatever it might be, about why don't you show them? I think that point is so important, because sometimes the change that you need isn't the one that you think you do. The change that you need of changing your body fat might not actually be the one that you need. And so although you're looking for that proof, I don't think that in most people that's actually changing need, especially if it is long term. And if it is the case of that, a lot of people actually, with regards to transformation pictures and stuff like that, it's very easy to give someone a plan and then blame them for not sticking to it. It's like, you're the reason. It's not you are not the reason. It's the methods that are being used, and you need to change those to suit you. But I think transformations can kind of push into that. But not to go back on a huge tangent. As I said, we can jump back on and have another conversation. But thank you so much for coming on, and everybody that's listening to Paul's podcast here, give it a share, or again, even so sometimes a message to people that are putting in time to try and help you guys out goes a long way. So drop a message and let them know that you've listened to it and that you took a lot of information from it as well.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much, mate. And yeah, thanks for everyone that's listening. Like Oisin said, make sure you give it a share, give it a comment. Just do your magic so that it goes far and wide, because again, the purpose of the podcast is not for my own self-adulation. It's actually to help as many people as possible, and that's why we do it. And that's why I get people like Oisin on, because you're exactly the same as me. But yeah, so be sure to check in for the next episode. We've got some incredible people lined up. No spoilers here, unfortunately, but yeah, join in for the next one, and we will see you then.